It is now 3 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and call the CRA board meeting to order. Mr. Tedder, do we have any agenda modifications?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Okay. So we'll move to our presentation by our chair of our CAC, Dr. Minji Kim. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
All right, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me once again. And I hope everyone had a good summer and Labor Day weekend. So I'm here to update you on our meeting, CAC meeting that happened on August 3rd. And I don't have a ton of update as we had a light agenda, and we will also not meet in September because of lack of items to discuss. So our meetings have been shorter than what it has been, which is good. First of all, the agenda item before you today, the Neighborhood Partnership Grant, CAC fully supported the proposed recommendations to modify the program so that the money can get out to the neighborhoods, communities in need as soon as possible. On budget, I really want to thank the staff for the improved transparency in the budgeting process. We were kept up to date and was informed of the changes that will be brought in front of you. So we really want to thank the staff for the transparency. And then on the event funding scoring process, again, another great improvement in terms of the scoring process and the evaluation criteria. I really want to thank the subcommittee, Mr. Jay Morrell, Ms. Mitchell, and Ms. Footman for taking on this role and scoring the applications objectively based on pre-established criteria. So I want to thank them for their time, and I have full faith in their evaluations. And finally, the item that we spent most time deliberating was an application from this organization called Play Big. And this was a for-profit organization that offers therapy, education, and recreation for children with special challenges. They aim to bring pediatric treatment and education and indoor play gyms for children with special challenges. And the applicants have ensured that the children in the community, the Southside community, would be able to take advantage of their services and attend their school through scholarships and insurance. So with that insurance in mind, the CAC members fully and unanimously were supportive of the idea of Play Big coming into the Southside community. And we discussed that, or one of the comment was made that this will be one of the most powerful projects that could come before the CAC and make a huge impact on the Southside community. However, their funding request was large, $1.2 million, and was clearly beyond the scope of the CRA budget. As you will see today, the 5-year budget total for the medium and large scale funding is $1.6 million, which would mean that we won't have much money left if we fund the $1.2 million request. So given the financial standing of the CRA, the CAC strongly recommended that the applicant work with the CRA staff and city staff to seek other sources of funding that could be combined with CAC assistance. So that's where we landed with that project for now. And this was a pre-application decision, so they are working with the city staff and CRA staff to identify those additional funding sources, and then they will, I believe, come back for a formal application later on. I think that was the one major main item that I wanted to update you on, but otherwise, I don't have anything else, so I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have, and thank you.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for serving as chair and helping us navigate these waters, and congratulations on your reappointment. We look forward to continuing to work with you. Mr. Mayor.
Dr. Kim, good afternoon. First of all, I want you to know how much I thoroughly enjoyed having the opportunity to sit down and talk to you the other day. You are doing an amazing job as chair of the CAC, and when we look at where you have been able to bring the Citizens Advisory Group, hey, good job, and thank you. Really appreciate it. And the entire CAC is doing a fantastic job. We appreciate it. I do have one question, just looking for
Sure.
a little clarification about the discussion on the recommendation. I just briefly mentioned it to you, and I brought it up yesterday during my briefing with staff. When we look at the downtown improvement, downtown CRA's, I just lost it, the large event funding, I noticed that the Southern Shakespeare Festival requested $25,000 and received a recommendation of 0, and it was noted that the application was a week late. What was the discussion? Was it solely based on the fact that they were late, or were there other circumstances? Were there other organizations that received funding that would not have received funding if Southern Shakespeare was included? What was the, what did Southern Shakespeare say because they were late? Yeah, just bring us up to speed on the conversation.
Sure. Thank you for your question. And to be clear, I was not part of the subcommittee selection process. However, given that this is a downtown large event funding, Wayne might be able to shed more light on the application's qualification.
And Mayor, that's going to be considered under item 8.01, and we do have a representative from the applicant here today to speak.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Hey, Dr. Kim, again, thank you. And I know that you're extremely busy as a professor as well in urban regional planning, and you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you so much for actually all the board members. I really appreciated all our individual meetings, and I really look forward to working with you as we transition to a new era for the CRA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for any other board members? Thank you again for your service, and thank you. I see at least one of your CAC members here. Thank you for your service and all of the CAC. Thank you very much. Next, we will go to our public comments. Ms. Williams, we have speakers on with us today.
Yes, we do. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I have 2 speaker cards for citizens that are wanting to speak. Mr. Stanley Sims on agenda item number 7.02, and Mr. Kayla Norris Barber on agenda item number 9.01. And then an applicant with Southern Shakespeare would like to speak prior to the discussion on 8.01 regarding the downtown district large event grant fund applications.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take all speakers now,
Okay?
and they can just let us know which items they're speaking on. So if you will call the first speaker, please.
Mr. Stanley Sims, your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you. Followed behind him will be Mr. Kayla Norris Barber. Followed behind him will be Ms. Laura Johnson. Thank you.
My name is Stanley Sims. I'm at 603 Martin Luther King Boulevard. I'm here to speak on 2 areas. One is I think that we have an ethical issue if we have CRA members sitting on the board, advocating for projects, judging the projects, scoring the projects, multiple business and nonprofits applying for the funds. That's a little bit much. And that's what's going on. And the other thing that I have an issue with is we're at a pivotal time in our community. I just left the federal courthouse. I know you all don't think that what's going on down there has anything to going on in here. But what went on in here forced what's going on down there. There's a part in the trial that not Stanley, not Irwin Jackson, but the federal prosecutors put in, where Scott Maddox, J.T. Burnett, was in Las Vegas with a miniature stripper. And Scott Maddox, while he was on this dais, told the informant, confident informant Mike Sweet, if you get me that miniature prostitute for $750, quote words I'm using, that $2 million in the CRA is yours. That's video and audio. Transcript. So I think it's bad public policy to ignore what has happened, not try to correct it. And we put our in the sand. That gives this city manager boost power. And I'm afraid, my wife is afraid, for my son, for my health, for our existence. This guy does not play fair with those he don't like. And I'm so sorry I'm not a part of his chosen. No, I'm not sorry.
Next speaker, please.
Thank you. Next speaker will be Mr. Kayla Norris Barber, followed behind him will be Ms. Laura Johnson. Name and address for the record, sir, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Kayla Norris Barber, 527 West Brevard Street. I'd like to encourage you all to consider or reconsider the incoming CRA director's salary. I think we have a situation where we're creating a compression of salaries in that department, where you have a person who would report to the director who earns more money than he does. And you have an administrative assistant who earns a comparable salary. Now, there's $129,000 in the budget for the CRA director, and the former CRA director made $120,000. So I would encourage you to strongly consider paying that person what I think the value of that position is worth. And if you look at it, that person now has a higher level report, because that level reporting is on par with the city attorney, the city manager, the treasurer clerk, and your internal auditor. There's a great deal more responsibility. Now he has to play, well, for all practical purposes, you know he got to play politics because he reports to 5 people. So he has to strike a balance, especially a political balance, because he reports to a political body. So I'm really begging you to reconsider his contract and pay him what he's worth.
Next speaker, please.
Thank you. Last and final speaker, Ms. Laura Johnson. Your name and address for the record, please, and you have 3 minutes.
Laura Johnson, 1432 Grape Street, here to speak about 801. Since 2015, Southern Shakespeare Company has been a part of the community events and festivals, beginning with the opening of Cascades Park. We were there in 2015 with Midsummer Night's Dream, and since then have grown every year and have become a part of the cultural fabric that is our Tallahassee community. We have enjoyed, appreciated, and grown with the support of the city year after year, and would not have been able to do that without your support. COVID has required us to examine the programming that we do and the type of delivery of those programs, and has also required new positions and restructuring of our organization. In addition to the organizational challenges, many of us have suffered personal challenges throughout this past year and a half. And as we have navigated these COVID challenges, we've also been transitioning duties and responsibilities among staff so that not one single person was carrying the load of all the grant writing and all the grant management. We made a mistake. I made a mistake. While we were all focused on post-event reports and restructuring, internal transitions, we absolutely missed the approaching deadline. We made a mistake again. I carry the weight of that squarely on my shoulders. We all know and recognize that deadline dates are there for a reason, and I regret with you all here that the CRA large event grant deadline was missed. Southern Shakespeare works to serve our community every day, not just during the festival, but with our year-round education programs and community outreach efforts. Our track record for meeting deadlines and applications and reports has been impeccable up until now. Our application scores, along with this one this year, have been consistently high, demonstrating the strength of our programs, our proposals, and our team. And we've been able to serve our community with your support. Deadlines exist for a reason. Again, I know that. And I find it extraordinary that I'm standing here before you asking for reconsideration of the panel's decision. But these are extraordinary times in every way. And I throw myself at your mercy and ask for your reconsideration and support for our 2022 large event funding best for our festival this year. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our last speaker.
That is correct.
Okay, we will move now to the consent agenda. Mr. Tedder, has there been any items pulled from consent?
No, ma'am.
Move consent.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that we accept the items on consent. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. We're now on item number 7, Greater Frenchtown Southside District Policy Formation. Item number 7.01, approval of proposed changes to the Neighborhood Partnership Grant Program. And we do have, let's see, Mr. Tedder,
Yep.
I'll yield to you for that, but I do see we have Ms. Ashley Edwards online.
Correct. If I could just go ahead and just turn it over to Ashley and Jillian Driscoll. They're going to introduce the item and go over the recommendations.
Okay, welcome, Ashley. And
Welcome. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, for letting us present this to you today. We're so excited about this program. The Neighborhood Partnership Grant is one of the best programs that we have in terms of helping neighborhoods achieve some of their goals. And we're really proud of the work that we've done with this grant. Jillian Driscoll is our Neighborhood Services Coordinator that leads the program for us. And she's going to share some of the details with you, as well as some of the success stories that we've already had. And then we've got a few suggestions that have come from the participants themselves and ways that we think we can improve the program for your consideration. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jillian.
all right, welcome, Jillian.
All right, thank you so much, Ashley. So I just have a brief overview and summary of the Neighborhood Partnership Grant. Okay, so it was established in 2017, and this was for the CRA districts, neighborhoods to undertake small-scale neighborhood improvement projects, and all the projects do need to take place in the public right-of-way or on property owned and controlled by the homeowners association. Currently, the funding for each project ranges from $500 to $5,000, and all the projects have to have a clear public benefit, and they have to be under one of the following categories: public safety, emergency preparedness, beautification, or placemaking. And grants are distributed on a first-come, first-served basis, and they can only be one per neighborhood per year. And our division, the Neighborhood Affairs Division, is really happy to assist all neighborhoods in completing the application. So that's the actual physical paper application, and also any technical assistance and any other documents they need to gather to accompany the application. And in 2017, the CRA had budgeted $50,000 for this, and we have since then completed 4 projects. So we currently have $30,668 established for this grant. So I'm just going to briefly touch on the 4 projects that we completed. The first one is the Carolina Oaks Homeowners Beautification Project, and you can see here they had park benches installed, a raised garden, and other beautification, and this was all on land owned and occupied by the Carolina Oaks Homeowners Association. Then we had the South Roanoke project. This was near Florida A&M. It's a state historical marker that recognizes the site of the boarding house where female Florida A&M students resided, as well as the childhood home of Senator and Congresswoman Carrie Meeks. And then there was also a bench there for visitors and residents to enjoy the site. And this was on the public right-of-way at Jakes Patterson Street. And then the Frenchtown Neighborhood Project, this was implemented on the site of the Frenchtown Heritage Hub Market. There was a pergola and a bench that were installed, and then also some landscaping you can see here around the already existing Hub's sign. And then the last project that we funded through the Neighborhood Partnership Grant was the Levy Park project. And this was along 7th Avenue. There were 4 gas lamps added to some existing gas lamps that are already there. They're a signature feature of the neighborhood. And the residents there really just wanted to continue that signature feature and then add more lighting for a safety aspect. And then when we were doing all 4 of these projects, we did receive a lot of feedback from the community on 2 main things primarily. The first one was the limitation of space to implement a project because there's multiple neighborhoods in the CRA district that really just have a very small portion or small parcel within the CRA district boundary. So in that space, they don't have physical land to do something physical that would benefit their neighborhood. Then the second feedback that we received was the grant amount. It's currently $5,000, but all 4 of these projects said, you know, if they had more money, maybe $7,500 or $10,000, they could do a more impactful project or something a little bit bigger, higher scale. So that is the feedback that we received. And our recommendations here to accept the updates on the Neighborhood Partnership Grant, recommend approval on increasing the maximum grant award to $7,500, and then expanding the grant funding categories to include neighborhood engagement and neighborhood enrichment projects, in addition to those 4 categories that I previously mentioned. So Ashley and I are here to take any questions that you may have, so feel free to ask us.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, board members? Okay, well, we'll entertain a motion.
Move staff recommendation on.
Second.
It's been properly moved by Board Member Richardson and seconded by Board Member Porter that we accept staff recommendation. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item will be 7.02. We have an update on the fiscal year 2022 Greater Frenchtown, Southside, and Downtown Promotional and Special Event Grants. Ms. Williams?
Yes, thank you very much. Just a real quick update. This information was provided to you all as a part of your agenda item for 7.02. Staff does have recommendations in that agenda item regarding this matter. Just note that this is an agenda for both of the districts, for the CRA, Greater Frenchtown Southside District and the Downtown District, but it's regarding the promotional and special event grant funding, what we consider to be the small event grant funding, and the options regarding the recommendation from both of the bodies that did the evaluations are included as a part of the agenda, with options number 1, 2, and 3 recommended by staff based upon the recommendations from the Citizens Advisory Committee or from the commission, but there is the option to provide staff with other direction.
Okay. Ms. Tedder, you need to add anything to them?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Board members?
Move staff recommend, I'm sorry. Move
I just
staff
have a question, whenever.
Okay. We have move staff recommendation,
Second.
seconded by Board Member Richardson, Board Member Porter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, so I see here 2 organizations that applied for funding did not receive the minimum score. I was wondering do we provide, you know, I assume we do, we provide feedback on, you know, kind of where there could be improvement, and so that they know when they reapply that they can improve?
Yes, absolutely, we do. Post the evaluations, dependent upon the scores, we do mail out those score sheets to the applicant. We contact it for sure the applicants that don't score high enough. We schedule appointments and meetings with them to help them in the future with future submittals to try to increase their scores. So contact has been made with all of the applicants for any of the grant funding whose scores did not meet the threshold necessarily for funding to schedule those meetings, and we've had about 2 so far.
Okay. And I'm not suggesting we do this, and I'm not going to make a motion. Have we considered, or have we ever, in this case, you know, we could, looks like, could we, the board, we allocated 50,000 and we're spending 31,500. Have we ever considered kind of working with them and giving them an opportunity to reapply within like a 1 month or 2 month time period?
The information regarding the minimum threshold on scoring is codified in the guidelines and criteria. So I don't think with this, we would be able to do it the way that you're talking about, but potentially you could open an additional cycle, or you could make modifications to the guidelines or criteria.
Okay, I mean, I support the guidelines and criteria. I think it's good to have a high standard. Maybe moving forward, we can open a second cycle if we have $20,000 for events that have not been spent, but thank you.
Thank you.
And it's my understanding, Ms. Williams, that the outstanding balance will roll back to the master project fund
That is
and will
correct.
be used in the next year, in the part of the 5-year budget cycle. Okay. Any other questions? The motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. Our next item is 7.03.
I'd say this item is very similar to the one that we just did, because we're still in the genre of discussing event grants. This is for fiscal year 2022, the Greater Frenchtown Southside Large Event Grants. With this actually did go before the Scoring Evaluation Committee that is comprised of the Greater Frenchtown Southside Citizen Advisory Committee members. There was a certain amount of funding that the CRA board did allocate funding for fiscal year 2022. You guys did that at your May 13, 2021 meeting. You did allocate, make a recommendation to allocate $100,000. The scoring meeting was held on the applications that were received in totality. All of the applications that we received for the Greater Frenchtown Southside Large Event Grant were submitted timely. With the submittal of those applications and ranking of them, all of the applications except for, I believe it was one, all of them scored high enough to be eligible for funding. But when the ranking was done regarding the scoring for the applications versus the amount of money that was previously allocated, the evaluation committee quickly saw that if you went strictly to ranking, that you would be out of money. So they made a recommendation or determination to request that all of the applications that scored high enough to be eligible for funding be funded, and the ones that were under a certain ranking, they requested that those applicants received a reduced amount of funding of $10,000, and of the 8 applications in the Greater Frenchtown Southside Large category that were received, only one of them did not score high enough to be eligible for funding. In your agenda item, the request is an option to, from the recommendation from the Greater Frenchtown Southside Citizens Advisory Committee evaluators, for the board to consider increasing the amount of funding for the Greater Frenchtown Southside Large Event Grant Program to fund all of the applications that were submitted that scored high enough to be funded, and that would require for you to add an additional $25,000 to the budget. And I believe you do have a budget item that's coming up subsequent to this, and the funding increase of the additional $25,000 is already included if that is so your desire. So there's some options that are listed in the agenda item based off of the recommendation from the CAC members and staff.
Okay.
Move staff recommendation on options 1 and 2, Madam Chair.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that we accept staff recommendations for options 1 and 2. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 7.04.
Okay, thank you. 7.04.
4.
8.01.
I'm sorry, I'm
Oh,
sorry, I'm
okay.
looking down, 8.01. Yeah, we're moving downtown. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you very much. This is on the fiscal year 2022 downtown large event grant funding. You were presented with an agenda item from analysis a few weeks ago that staff prepared. A similar thing happened. There is a scoring committee that is comprised of the Development Review Committee members. 3 of the members did do the evaluation of the applications, 5 applications were received. 4 applications were received what I would call, or we would call timely. And as Ms. Laura Johnson mentioned, there was one additional application that came in a few days after the deadline. The evaluation committee was concerned about setting a precedence and a few other things that were outlined in your agenda item. And they did make a recommendation to only fund the applications that scored high, not only scored high enough, because all 5 of the downtown large applications that were received, whether they were received timely or what we call late, met the score threshold to be funded. But the evaluation committee was concerned with 3 things. Their thoughts were that the application received about a week ago, it was received a week after the cycle ended. They were concerned about maintaining fairness to the applicants that submitted their applications within the event cycle, and concerns about setting a precedent. So a few weeks ago, we did do the agenda item, and the information was in your agenda item, options number 1 and 2, but I do want to call out that there is an option 3, provide staff with an alternate direction. And as we're talking about a subsequent agenda item coming up regarding the budget, looking at the CRA downtown budget, there is adequate funding, if you would so desire, for the additional funds for all of the applications that met the score threshold, regardless of timeliness and untimeliness in this COVID environment, that you could do that, we could do that, and you would have funding available in the downtown master fund. I know the board had asked us in the future from just seeing board direction that you wanted an additional expository, so that's what I just tried to do.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start off the conversation and make a motion as well. We have 5 large events in downtown and have had 5 signature events in downtown for many, many, many years. Yes, they were late, and they should, I appreciate the individual on behalf of Southern Shakespeare standing before us and taking full responsibility for the fact that they were late. Nonetheless, when it was scored separately, outside of the fact of the lateness of the application, it did score a 93.6, right in line, if not a little bit higher than one of the other organizations that was funded. And folks, these are 5 huge festivals and have been for some time. It fits within our budget. I don't want to get into how many times do we notify organizations leading up to deadlines? Do we share responsibility on notification as well? I am simply going to make a motion that this year we move forward, understanding that with COVID and everything, it has been an interesting year. And many of the people that work for these organizations are volunteering in their positions as well, that we fully fund all 5, including the Southern Shakespeare Company Incorporated. So what I'm looking for is, I know that option 3 gives alternative direction. What is the appropriate motion that I need to make in order to fully fund the Lemoyne, Springtime, Florida Lit Fest, Word South, Asian Coalition, and Southern Shakespeare Company? And Southern Shakespeare requested 25, funding at 25 as well. Fully fund all of them based on their recommendation.
Second.
I'm gonna look at Madam Attorney on how that motion should be shaped.
Well, it appears to me that you have the authority to make an exception to your policy. So if you are willing to make that exception as a body, you can do that.
Okay.
On motion.
And that's the motion on the table.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and second that we accept, approve funding for all, including the one that was late. Let me just say that I too agree that, I know we're in a COVID world, but I think that what we need to make sure of is that we understand that, as she has clearly said, deadlines are deadlines, and we must do that, but we can't always expect going forward that there will be an opportunity to fix that. But I understand the ramifications and also the impact financially it would mean to our community, because I know this is not the only funding that you will receive. So we just want to make sure that we understand in the future, we'll just do our very best to try to meet those deadlines. So I will support the motion. All in favor of this motion?
Okay.
I'm sorry, Board Member Matlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with you. I think anytime we set a deadline, we should really be striving toward it. I wouldn't want to start where we have multiple people coming in late. This is a one-off, I understand. It is COVID. And also looking at our budget, this year we did just return $25,000 from the special ed grants program. So it's not actually pushing us to spend more money than we had already budgeted for events this year. So I do agree with the mayor that if we'd like to make the exception, I think considering everything our community's gone through the past 2 years, the more events, the better. People are just eager to have some sort of entertainment or some sort of bright spot in their lives right now. So I'm happy to support the motion to make sure this event goes forward.
Okay, Board Member Richardson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't add a whole lot more to that, only to say that Southern Shakespeare has been one of the marquee events in the downtown district over the years. And as you heard Laura say, not only do they provide that event, but they've been active in the community for years. So it's not like they're an upstart organization coming just to ask for funding for this one position. I think that it was a unique circumstance that caused this to happen. If they have been, meeting timelines in the past, providing documentation that was needed, and then you had a transition of executive directors, and somehow, the ball got dropped on getting the application in on time. So I don't think that we're setting a precedent in that respect. But I think this is one of the events that is one of the marquee events in our downtown district and deserves special consideration under these circumstances. And I certainly support the request for funding. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Board Member Porter, you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm ready to vote.
Okay,
Can I
all
just
right.
close real quick?
Sure.
Because I do think it's important to note that the selection committee did an outstanding job.
Yes.
The selection committee followed the rules and as outlined. It's not necessarily their job to make that call. That's ours. So I want to make sure, Dr. Kim, we do send a clear message to the CAC and to the selection committee that we really appreciate what they did, and they followed the rules to the T, and that was good. That's how it's supposed to work.
Well, if my English teacher is listening, she was my introduction to Shakespeare. I'm trying to do the right thing. Ms. Lord, no, I'm trying to do the right thing.
Tomorrow and tomorrow.
Okay, all right. Motion has been made. We've all had our comments. All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. Moving on to 9.01. Community Redevelopment Agency Executive Director Employment Agreement. And I'm going to yield to our city attorney who negotiated and worked this contract with Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Attorney, I need you to get in that microphone.
Let me relocate it a bit. On August 17, 2021, the Community Redevelopment Agency conducted interviews for the Community Development Agency Executive Director position at a special board meeting. After conducting interviews, the board voted unanimously to offer Mr. K. Stephen Cox II the position of Executive Director. The board further directed the city attorney to negotiate a compensation package with Mr. Cox and present it to the CRA board for approval. Per the proposed employment agreement, the effective date is September 27, 2021. Mr. Cox served as CRA Director for the City of Bartow for 6.5 years. Mr. Cox is a certified public manager and has a master's degrees in urban and regional planning and landscape architecture. He is also a certified Florida Redevelopment Association redevelopment professional. The city attorney has negotiated an agreement for employment with Mr. Cox. The proposed employment agreement provides for an annual salary of $100,000, severance pay of 20 weeks, as authorized by Florida Statute Section 215.425, and the same benefits provided to executive management staff of the City of Tallahassee, which will also include approval of reasonable relocation expenses. The recommended action is option 1, approve the proposed employment agreement with K. Stephen Cox II for the position of Community Redevelopment Agency Director and authorize the chair on behalf of the CRA Board to execute the agreement and approve reasonable relocation expenses based on City Personnel Policy 702 and practice. Mr. Cox is delighted to become the Executive Director of the CRA.
Move
Thank you,
option
Madam
one.
Attorney.
Move option one.
Second.
It's been properly moved for option one, second by Board Member Matlow, and seconded by Board Member Richardson. Any further discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. We will
See you at 5.
have come back for a public hearing at 5 to deal with our budget. Board members, do you want to go ahead and deal with the unagenda items now? Just a moment.
Are there?
I understand we have another speaker, but do we want to go ahead and do the unagenda items? So after we've done the public hearing, we will be completed with this meeting? Okay. We do have an additional speaker.
Good.
Yes. Thank you. We have Mr. Leslie Harris. Mr. Leslie Harris, if you don't mind, if you'll come to the podium, name and address for the record, sir, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
And do we have any speakers on the unagenda item?
Not that I have at this time.
Okay, very good. Mr. Harris, thank you for being with us.
Thank you all for giving me 3 minutes. My name is Leslie Harris. I live at 2022 Hillsborough Street in the Providence neighborhood. I've owned a home in Providence since 1992. I'm here to talk about the dismissal of Walter McDonald III from the CRA-CAC.
Can you get closer to pull the mic down and get closer to the mic, Mr. Harris?
I'm here to talk about, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Better.
I'm here to talk about the dismissal of Walter McDonald III from the CRA-CAC, and really just to talk briefly about the discussions that you all had in regards to that issue in your July meeting. It seemed to me in that meeting you mainly focused on the fact that Walter did not live in the neighborhood. That was a given, okay? But no one took the time to ask what ties or connections Walter really had to the neighborhood, okay? First, Walter did live in the neighborhood at one point, but he moved out for whatever reasons, and I don't think that's relevant now. But one of the things you forgot is that Walter is the president of the Providence Neighborhood Association, okay? And in that role, he has done the same kind of work that every president previous to him has done. And that's largely been to improve the neighborhood, and then specifically to implement the goals and objectives of our neighborhood plan. We've been working on this plan since 2003. So that, to me, is one of the key connections to the neighborhood that no one talked about. And each of you have interacted with Walter and know the kind of work that he's done in the neighborhood, again, largely associated with our neighborhood plan. In addition, though, he's faced new challenges. One, the so-called alternate airport gateway and the impact that it's going to have on our neighborhood. And then two, being asked to go through another neighborhood planning process when we already have a valid neighborhood plan, okay? So Walter's done the kind of work that previous presidents has done. The second point I want to make is that Walter is a member of the Providence Baptist Church. The Providence Baptist Church sits in the heart of our neighborhood. His father is the pastor of that church. His father is a co-founder of our neighborhood association. From 1996 until 2012, when our community center opened, that church served as the base of operations for our neighborhood association. That means we had all of our meetings there, and we had held all of our activities either at the church or on the grounds of that church, okay? So that church has been a cornerstone of our neighborhood since 1996, and Walter has been an integral part of the ministries of that church. For example, the church started a bread ministry, okay? That bread ministry...
Mr. Harris, if you would start to conclude your comments, please.
That bread ministry ultimately involved in a partnership with the farm share, and that has allowed the church and our neighborhood to provide food on a regular basis to both our neighborhood and people outside of the neighborhood as well. And I would ask if you all would just give me one more minute, please, because this is an important issue. And in addition, Walter was able, because of his connections with Farm Share and Second Harvest, he's been able, for the last 18 months, he's been able to organize and host at least 5 different food distribution events, 3 in our neighborhood and 3 outside of that neighborhood. And part of that included organizing people to deliver to the front door of people who could not come to the sites. Okay, so that's another critical connection, or tie, as you called it, strong tie to our neighborhood. Then the last 2 points is that in 2014, we developed or created the Providence Neighborhood Association Redevelopment Corporation, which is a IRS tax-exempt corporation registered in the state of Florida. Walter was selected to be a founding member of the board of directors of that corporation. Now, he did step aside in part because he was asked to be on the board of directors of the Tallahassee Lenders Consortium, which he's accepted. But still, since 2014, he has interacted with that corporation when it comes to the neighborhood association being awarded grants, because our corporation serves as the fiscal agent for the neighborhood association. And if you all would look at your records, you will see that we were awarded some CRA special event grants over the years, okay? And so we collaborated, we meaning our corporation collaborated with Walter to apply for and then administer those grants. That's just one example. And then the last point is that in his capacity as president of our neighborhood association, Walter served as the liaison between our neighborhood association and the Delta Kappa Omega Foundation, which runs our community center, okay? And in serving in that capacity, one of the things that he's done is to help that organization to provide some of the services or activities in one of their signature programs during the summer, which is the summer enrichment program. Walter agreed to host one day of activities on behalf of the neighborhood. So I think if you look at those individual connections, either individually or in combination, that shows that Walter has strong ties to me, okay, to the neighborhood, and has had those kinds of ties for a number of years.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. And let me just say this. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you coming every time you come. And no one is saying that Mr. McDonald is not a model president for Providence and a great citizen here in the city and a great worker. It was just brought to our attention by a citizen that there were people serving that did not fit the bylaws.
I understand that. I do.
Please let me finish. So we, with the help of our attorney, the legal office, we updated our bylaws unknowing that, that Mr. McDonald had completed his application with a Jim Lee Road address. And my fear is that if our bylaws, if we're gonna defy our bylaws that we just updated, then we should not have even touched them to update them. We're trying to abide by the bylaws and make things fair across the board. And Mr. McDonald can continue doing all those things you just named. And as president, he could also name someone who lives in the community to be a part, to represent you all on the CAC. Meanwhile, until you have a representative from Providence to sit on the CAC, your voice is not being heard on the CAC. We do have another applicant, but that applicant does not live in Providence. And so if we accepted that applicant, it would create two applicants from the same neighborhood, and we're trying to avoid that. So I encourage you all to find someone else who lives in Providence and, well, or live or work, whatever, follow the bylaws, find someone immediately to join the CAC so that your voices can be heard. Because this board has already moved on that appointment. And I've spoken to Mr. McDonald. I've made him personally aware of where I am. I think very highly of him, and I think he does a great job. But we're trying to abide by the bylaws that we're holding everybody else to.
Commissioner, thank you for that, but I want to make one last point. When I understand that, but you had the opportunity to change the bylaws to address the issue in a way that, in my estimation, reflects the real intent and purpose of the CRA. And let me give you one specific example.
I'm gonna have to interrupt you, Mr. Harris. I'm happy to speak with you. You and I talk to one another.
But I really need to make this point.
But-
In 2005, I did not live in the CRA district.
We are aware, but
Okay.
that was 2005.
And you all changed the bylaws, just like you changed the bylaws now to accommodate me, okay? So
Mr.
you
Harris,
changed the
thank
bylaws
you.
to accommodate others. And I'm not here speaking for the neighborhood association. They have the responsibility to speak for themselves.
Thank you.
I'm speaking as a resident of our neighborhood.
Thank you, and I appreciate you. We are adjourned until the public hearing at 5 p.m.
Madam Chair? Okay.
I'm
I was
sorry.
going to ask if we wanted to do the sharing of ideas, but we can do it after.
Let's do sharing of
Okay, we can do sharing of ideas. Oh,
Bring us
we're back in.
Yep.
All right, we'll start with you, Board Member Porter.
Thank you. I just have one thing really quickly. I was wondering, and maybe, Madam Attorney, you can answer this question. Do we have a separate, and do we need a separate lobbying registration for the CRA? As we, I know we have one for the city business, we have one for Blueprint. As a separate entity that the CRA is, do we need a separate registration for that, or do we not?
Well, the cities, I'm trying to remember how it's phrased in the code, but I think this, can you hear me?
Can you move in a little bit? Thank you.
My recollection, and I'll check while we're doing some other sharing of ideas, was that the city's lobbying ordinance only applied to the city. So if you desire to have something else related to the CRA, that would have to be done as a separate legal entity.
Okay. Well, in that case, I don't know how we feel about, I mean, it seems to me like it would make sense. There's multi-million-dollar projects that come before us. They do have lobbyists. I would support, if the board supports it, asking for an item back that proposes something like that if we want to consider it. It seems like it just makes sense to me. We have it for Blueprint, we have it for the city, and we have it for the county, that the CRA be included in that so that we are above reproach. I don't know if there's any discussion or opposition to that, but it's something I'm interested in.
On point, Madam Chair. Madam Attorney, would lobbyist registration for the CRA, would we have to create that within the CRA, or could we come up in agreement with the Treasurer Clerk's office and in exchange for a survey, so it's all under one place?
I think you could come up with an agreement to if they're willing to utilize those clerk services, which is what we do pretty much on a standard basis.
I would be interested in that if we could just include the CRA and work with the city to have a spot where lobbyists could apply at one location.
Sure, whatever is simplest.
Madam Chair?
Board Member Richardson.
I guess my question would be, and I've been here 6 years now, and I've never been lobbied as a member of the CRA. And so, because our structure is a little different, because we have a citizen advisory committee that these issues are vetted through before they even come to us. I don't have a problem with it, but just we're structured a little differently than someone actually coming to the city commission or the county or Blueprint and lobbying board members on behalf of projects. I haven't experienced that in the years that
Has any of you experienced any lobbying?
It would be hard to say if they're not registered.
Well, I mean, has anyone
Sure.
approached you to make a decision?
Well, I think as an example, and I'll use Mr. Barber who's here, when we have organizations that come receiving funding to do stuff specifically within the CRA district, that would be considered lobbying. Receiving money for a financial benefit, whether it's a company or an individual, that would be a situation that would need to be registered. We don't have that in place right now, so there's no violation. But what we have to be very careful of is the CRA is also built different because it's direct investment specifically in neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And we do use a little bit of the economic development for neighborhood businesses to actually work. So if we move forward, Commissioner Porter, and I don't have a problem with the CAC taking a look at it and then also having it come back to us for a recommendation, but are we going to require, because look, our job here is literally to allocate funding, okay? That's what the CRA does. We allocate funding. So that means that every single agenda item that comes before us, we will be investing in somebody, whether it's a neighborhood association, an individual, or a business that would be performing a service. Therefore, does every single person, by definition, have to register as a lobbyist? These are the type of things that we would need to walk through. I don't think we'll hammer it out tonight, and I will be more than happy out of respect for the position and for you to bring it back. But I'm hesitant because of the nature of the CRA and what we do, how that's going to impact the citizens of Tallahassee, because this is also the debate that we had at the city level about how we register, and the Ethics Board, I know, has been talking about this. Who is actually qualified as a registered lobbyist and who isn't? And I just want to make sure we're not in a situation where every single citizen of Tallahassee, whether you're representing your neighborhood, your street, a business, or an individual, has to register. The other question is, are we having these conversations? I'm not on the board. Commissioner Matlow, are y'all doing this at DIA?
It hasn't been broached yet, but I think it would be appropriate
Sure.
for every board we serve on to have a system.
CRTPA?
That's the chair, that's the chair.
It has come up, but the CRTP has not adopted it.
So what I'm understanding, this is kind of the movement that all of the boards are doing to have some type of
A
lobbyist
conversation about it,
registration.
correct, yeah.
Okay.
It hasn't come up at the TDC,
No.
to my knowledge, and I don't know about the Appalachia Regional Planning Committee either, but, okay.
Well, one criteria, at least with the city, it does require compensation. So if there is a citizen who isn't being compensated, they would not be a lobbyist.
Define compensation by receiving an award?
No.
Receiving payment of some kind. I think they're being paid by someone.
I'm not interested in having the debate right now, because I can fire back my attorney and say, if you're investing on a street and the neighborhood receives funding, and if I live on that street and my house has a financial benefit by an increase in value, it's very complicated, and we're going to have to take time to work through that, and I'm committed to doing so. I don't think we're going to figure this out tonight, but I'm just saying that I think it is a different situation than the city, and let's just be very careful as we move forward, and also make sure that the CAC has the opportunity to weigh in as well. But I'll support the motion.
Board Member Porter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and I agree. Would definitely not support anything that would make, neighborhood association presidents and people who are just volunteers for the community that would require them to register to lobby. I am not even saying that we have, as a board, have experienced a problem. I mean, I did attend the trial. That is an example where there was lobbying going on, and it was not registered. So that's before all of our time here, but I do think it has been a problem. It was something that I just sort of thought one day, like, do we have that for the CRA? So I would like to have that conversation. It seems like some of the board members agree. But I agree. I mean, I think we can find something, hopefully, that meets the need if we agree that there is one.
Okay, well, let us do, oh, I'm sorry, Board Member Matlow, you were about to say something.
Yeah, just on point. I don't want to confuse lobbyists with vendors, and I know the city has its established definition of what a lobbyist is. The Ethics Board has proposed some changes to that, but I think when we look at, if we're bringing it to the CRA to just be consistent in the definition of who, so an applicant for a special events grant isn't a lobbyist if they're not being paid to come advocate for that. If they went and hired somebody separately and their sole purpose is to come get that awarded, that's absolutely lobbying. Is that happening here? I don't think I've been lobbied, but at the same time, without a registration, I'm not sure who is a lobbyist and who may be getting paid. And I think that's the what you're really trying to get in front of is I can have a list sent to me of people I know are registered. So if somebody is communicating with me, I know that they're doing it to be paid. But I'll support the motion when it comes.
Okay. Did you make a motion?
I don't know if I did. So I would like to make a motion to have staff come back to us with just a review of lobbying, what we're doing at the city, what we do at similar boards like Blueprint, and what, if any, recommendations they might have for a lobbyist registration and what that might look like for our consideration.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and second that we do just what Board Member Porter said. Second by Board Member Matlow. All in favor of the motion as stated, let it be known by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you. So just so I'm clear, it's coming back from the city attorney's office? Coming back from the CRA office?
With support.
Okay, all right, from the CRA office with legal counsel as needed, legal consult as
Absolutely.
needed,
Always.
always. Okay. Have any other ideas to share?
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
I thought you said anyone else in the world.
No,
No, I'm all
that's
good.
not
Thank
one
you. Thank you.
I have nothing, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to address Mr. Harris's point again, knowing that there's still a vacancy on the CAC, and my experience in Providence, and I've actually walked with Walter McDonald a couple of weeks ago, helping some residents and just seeing that, I mean, he knows the people there, but, some neighborhoods, there aren't strong advocates to come before government and really speak for the people of the neighborhood. And Walter, I believe, has really assumed that role and for the benefit of that neighborhood. And so we've looked at other boards in the past where we had to make an exception because we couldn't find somebody who lived in the boundaries or worked in the boundaries. So I don't know how long this vacancy will go on, considering we haven't had somebody fill it yet. So, Madam Attorney, what if we filled the vacancy and had a waiver to the bylaws or changed the bylaws to have a neighborhood representative that's from a neighborhood association or works in the neighborhood or is a pastor in the neighborhood? Are there any options that we would have to fill that vacancy and have somebody who is representing that community that doesn't live within the neighborhood boundaries?
Well, the board always has options, and it can always amend the bylaws again. Usually these go through again, the CAC for comment, and they come back to you as your normal course. I mean, you just change them to basically provide for that the person has to reside, work, or own property if they are going to be a neighborhood representative. So obviously, since you changed it before, you can change it again.
Okay. Then, look, I mean, considering we haven't had anybody step forward to represent the neighborhood thus far, and it's been a couple months now, I think it would be appropriate to continue to have someone to fill that vacancy. I think when we changed the bylaws, it wasn't our intent to exclude somebody, and this may have just been an error that we didn't recognize, but my personal belief is we want people on the CAC who are passionate about the area, that care about the area, and have the best interests of the residents and the people who live and frankly, work, play, as they say, you know, the third place where you go when you're not at work or where you're home, but where you really care about. And if that's the type of people we want serving, I think we need to look at the bylaws to allow people who are willing to show up to continue to serve. I've followed some CAC meetings over the years. They run late. They've put in a lot of work. They're unpaid, and we very, very much appreciate their community service. So I wouldn't want a line in a bylaw to exclude somebody who really wants to serve. So I would move that we modify the CAC bylaws, however staff sees fit, to be able to include Walter McDonald and bring him back to the CAC.
I do want to point out, under your current bylaws, you do already have an interested citizen, so that person already does not have to be to live, work, I guess, in the district.
Say again, we do.
There is an interested citizen. So currently, you have the Greater French, these are your members. Greater Frenchtown Front Porch Community, 2 representatives. Southside Neighborhood, 2 representatives. Capital Chamber of Commerce, 1 representative. Southside Business Representative. Interested Citizen, 1 representative. So the interested citizen does not have to reside, work, or own property.
Cheryl.
And then you have Florida State, and then you have a FAMU representative.
So the unfilled vacancy is a Southside neighborhood representative? And we haven't had any applicants since Mr. McDonald has left. That's accurate?
Well, you're correct, and we don't have any applicants, but we've had great conversation. And I'll just share, I would love for Walter to be here, and I've told him such. But we did not realize at the time when we were modifying the bylaws that he had submitted an application with a Jim Lee Road address. Now, what's to prevent someone with a Southwood address or a Killearn address wanting to represent Providence on the CAC? That's my concern. Whatever we do now will set precedents going forward. And I would love for him to be here, but we just need to think it through to the end and not be hasty on this. Because if so, I was upset when it was called to our attention and he was removed. I called him then and said to him, we're willing to figure out what we need to do. And so we thought we had, until we found out that he had submitted an application that did not include an address in Providence. And so at that moment in time, having just changed the bylaws, I felt as though my hands as chair was tied, but I'm open to do whatever the board wants to do. Your motion died for the lack of a second, though, by the way. I feel for Providence, but the energy that's going into getting Mr. McDonald put back on the CAC, I would hope that energy would be spent in finding someone that Mr. McDonald can either work with, a mentor, or what have you, to represent Providence on the CAC. I gotta believe he's not the only resident in all of Providence who can serve on the CAC. While he continues to serve as president, leading and guiding and working with us in the community. So we're not firing him from being president of Providence neighborhood. We haven't fired him at all. It wasn't our doing in the first place. A citizen brought to our attention, and we made modifications, approved modifications to the bylaws, and we still was missing Mr. McDonald. I would love to have him placed back on there. Mayor?
I think that maybe today might be premature to make a decision. What I would suggest is, we're talking about a position on the CAC. I'm sorry Dr. Kim just left, but Ms. Collier-Brown, as the representative of the CAC that's still here, I would be interested in hearing what you formally have to say at the appropriate time after the CAC's had a chance to meet. I'm interested in knowing if you all have put together some type of a strategy to proactively go into the community to recruit new members to apply. Because if I remember, the recommendation was actually a pretty strong recommendation that came from the CAC to take the position. Am I misunderstanding that?
Well, I don't recall it being a strong position, but it was not the CAC, it was a citizen who brought it to our attention.
I'm confused. Did this go through the CAC? Or it came straight to us? Okay. Okay, so
It happened on the night of a CAC meeting.
even more so, I'm curious to hear what the CAC has to say about the recruitment of a play. Look, they might come back and say, nah, we need this individual back on, and we need you to take the appropriate steps to put this individual on. Or they might come back and say, we put together a strategy to proactively recruit, and we believe that there are going to be some great candidates applying for y'all to be able to choose from. I'm just not comfortable making a decision right now. Let's give the CAC time to recruit and get appropriate people and see where this goes from there.
Okay. Board Member Porter, let me let Board Member Matlow still had the floor.
Sure.
I'll come to you next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I don't disagree with that. My concern is the prolonged vacancy with somebody willing to serve. So if there is somebody who's stepping forward soon, let's see it. But if not, I think we do need to take action. And, if nobody steps forward from the neighborhood representative, maybe we should consider switching one of those positions to a second interested party.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, Mr. Harris, thank you for coming. Walter is lucky to have you as a friend and a neighbor to speak on his behalf like that. I supported originally waiving the requirements to allow him to continue to serve. At this point, I would be curious to hear what the CAC thinks. In general, we have changed bylaws before. I believe we have waived the requirements. My general disposition is I would rather waive a requirement and make an exception than to change the bylaws. Because I do agree that Walter is truly an exception, and generally speaking, we don't want to open that door. But I do think it's a good idea to have the CAC consider this, and I know Dr. Kim has left, so she said that you will not be meeting in September. Your next meeting is in October. Okay. Go ahead.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Well, the CAC is still functioning.
Right.
They may have one member less than a full complement, but the CAC is not lacking a quorum. They're not unable to function because of that one member. And so I certainly wouldn't want us to change the bylaws to accommodate one individual when we just changed the bylaws. I think Walter does an excellent job as president of the Providence Neighborhood Association. I've walked the neighborhood with him. I've attended their food distributions on several occasions. Walter and I have talked about issues in the neighborhood that we've had addressed. But we have bylaws for a purpose, and I don't know that we can necessarily, for one individual, and we're talking about a neighborhood association, not one individual in that neighborhood. Now, if there is a neighborhood association, then obviously there has to be other. Mr. Harris, you may be interested in serving on the CAC representing Providence, but there has to be others that can be considered. I mean, Walter won't be there forever, and so I think there has to be an onus put on the neighborhood association to identify others who live in that neighborhood that could represent them on the CAC as well. So that's my position on it. I certainly don't think we should change the bylaws again to accommodate one person, because what if we have another situation and then here we are changing our bylaws to accommodate one person?
And my question would be, what are we changing the bylaws to?
Right.
What would fit
Right.
in this specific case, and then what would fit in the next specific case, and then the next specific case?
Right.
Board Member Porter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in that case, given what has been said, what direction would we like to go in? Is this something that we can request to be on the CAC's agenda for their input?
I think that the fact that a member of the CAC is here, she's heard the discussion, she can take it back and share it with the committee.
Okay.
And see where we are. I just believe that that we can make this work. We can make it work. Any?
I got nothing.
Shared ideas? Okay. I have nothing either. Thank you all so very much. We're adjourned until 5.
Right.
Awesome.
Recess.
Bye. The public hearing for the Community Redevelopment Agency is now called to order. Mr. Tedder?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair and board members, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like Sherry to very briefly present our budget materials. I think in the interest of time, we have the ability to just go over the changes from the last meeting that we had. And if you would like any additional information, she can certainly give you the full length presentation. But with that, I think, Sherry, if you could just come up and present what has changed since the last time we presented the budget to them.
And Wayne, I believe we have one public speaker for this item.
We have one public speaker.
That is correct. We have one speaker card from Mr. Bill Wilson. Mr. Wilson, if you would, come to the podium, your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes, sir. And that would be the only speaker card that we have at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Bill Wilson, 1816 Old Fort Drive in Tallahassee. Two things, I sent you all a memo earlier today. There are two things that we look at the budget that I would ask you to consider. First is to add additional money to the Affordable Housing Loan Fund. That current fund that you funded with some money from the trust fund is oversubscribed, and putting some more money in there would allow us to get some more affordable homes built in the next year, and would be a helpful piece. The other piece we're running into is working with Abena and trying to look at what we call the middle of the housing spectrum between single-family and big multifamily developments, the more smaller things. We run into a problem in not being able to fund the infrastructure. We can get the land, we can get the money for the building construction, but nobody wants to lend us money to put in a sewer line and a water line and stormwater in a street. And without that, you can't build. So something in the CRA district for some sort of infrastructure support, whether could be a grant, it could be a loan program that gets paid back as the lots get sold. It could be some sort of you fund it, and then there's a connection fee when the house is built that would in effect reimburse the city for that. It really is to the city's benefit because you're adding new utility service users, increased revenue, and increased tax revenue from the value of the new homes being built. So those are two things I think that could help us in getting more affordable housing built. You've got $1.4 million of unallocated money in your Frenchtown Southside CRA, and would ask you just consider putting some of that to those two activities. Thank you.
Thank you. Was that our only speaker?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you, Sherry.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. I have a brief presentation, and I'll just, I'm going to skip along some, just to give you some updates on the changes that took place in the budget based on some of your approvals at your last meeting in July 1, as well as your approvals that took place just recently, earlier this afternoon. So with that in mind, I'm going to skip here. So with the fiscal '22 proposed changes for the, based on the July 1st budget, you'll notice that you did approve the Clements Leadership Academy and Community Development for $300,000. And we're showing that we're going to propose to take $150,000 of that for fiscal year '21 funds and another $150,000 for fiscal year '22 funds. You also approved the Magnolia Oaks, and that is under the impact for poverty. It's an affordable housing development that you approved for $500,000. We are listing that for fiscal year '22. I'm showing that as being allocated for the affordable housing development. Also, you had changes for the Greater Frenchtown Southside large events, and that is going to be listed under our quality of life. That change was $125,000. You increased it from $100,000 to $125,000, and you just did that this afternoon. So we have that already listed in your budget. And other changes that took place were the increase in our prior year funds. The prior year funds are showing $665,000, and that's in your agenda item. And those are uncommitted funds that would be carried over into our fiscal year '22. And so those funds may increase or decrease depending on what our projects are when they close out at the end of the fiscal year. So we have several projects that are just open for the fiscal year that we're looking to close out as of September 30th. And once we close those funds, those remaining balances will carry over into our master project, and we'll use those to fund any future projects and programs that we have. So for our downtown, the changes that took place was what you did just recently, and let's see if I can get to our downtown. So just recently, you increased the large events for downtown from $100,000 to $122,200. And we've already made that change in the budget to increase those expenses. And that's the only change for the downtown as of yet. There were no increases or decreases in the prior year funds for downtown. So just to give you a summary, and I just want to give you a summary of the Greater Frenchtown Southside budget. For the revenues and prior year funds and reserve funds, we're showing $5.6 million being proposed for fiscal year '22. The personnel and operational expenses of $598,000. We have contractual commitments of $834,000 and non-contractual commitments of $4 million. Currently, there are no pending requests, and our proposed funds available at the end of fiscal year '22 would be about $143,968. The $1.4 million that we're showing in fiscal year '21, those funds available actually carry over into the fiscal '22 proposed budget. And for downtown, to give you a summary of that, revenues and prior year funds and reserve funds for downtown are proposed at $6.1 million, with personnel and operational expenses of $400,000, contractual commitments of $849,000, and non-contractual commitments of $429,000, with funds available of $4.4 million, and that includes the additional $22,000 that you just approved for the large events. And so with that, we're proposing, and there is an amendment for the fiscal year '21 budget amendment, and that is to return $60,000 from the South City Business and Job Incubator Project. That project you all voted not to move forward with, and so we're asking to return the $60,000 that was proposed for any architectural design to go back to the medium and large contingency project. So with that, we're asking you all to adopt the resolution for the CRA operating and capital budget for fiscal year '22 and to approve the budget amendment for fiscal year '21.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that we accept staff recommendation regarding the budget. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Wait, let me say aye. All opposed? Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I raise an issue? Instead of doing a modification to this agenda, we had some kind of late-breaking information for our downtown district that I want to make you aware of and possibly bring back an agenda item at your next meeting. Some of you have been aware that we've been working on a redesign of sidewalks on the South Monroe corridor from Park Avenue to Jefferson Street. Sidewalks are in very poor condition, to say it bluntly. I've been working with Greg Slay with the CRTPA, Steve Schaefer with Underground Utilities, Public Infrastructure, the Planning Department folks. And then we've been depending on Elizabeth Emanuel for the DIA to make sure that the right people are involved in this discussion as we're moving forward. Planning Department staff came up with some concepts. We presented it to the Downtown Improvement Authority as well as to downtown merchants. We have a resolution as to the concept that they prefer along that corridor. The corridor is owned by DOT, and so Greg Slay has gone to DOT and said, hey, what are some options that we could have for you to participate in funding? And I think the best solution would be, based on Greg's recommendation, was let the CRA fund the design of the project according to the standards that we want here in Tallahassee, and then carry the designs over to DOT and ask them to do the funding of the construction. And so instead of kind of doing budget amendment here, I'd like to staff to be able to bring back an agenda item at the next meeting to give you some more information on the concept as well as the potential cost for the design. I think it's going to be somewhere between $200,000, maybe $250,000 for design. But like I said, I didn't want to rush it as part of this item, but I definitely think it's a worthy item to be funded through the CRA, and would like your blessings to be able to bring that agenda back.
Okay. Any comments?
Madam Chair.
Okay.
I just want to say that a couple of the design alternatives were discussed at the DIA. It garnered pretty wide support. They didn't take any action on it because there wasn't a final proposal in front of them at the time, and they were going to go meet with the stakeholders and the businesses that would be the most directly impacted. But I do think the widely supported thing, and it's worthy of a conversation here. So I guess we need a motion to bring it back.
I'm sorry.
I guess we would need a motion to schedule that item, and I'd move that we get an update on that project and the work that's been put into it so far.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and second that we get an update. We bring an agenda item back at the next meeting to update us on the real cost of the design and anything related to that, including the widespread support to be able to do that.
I certainly appreciate you taking this consideration out of normal cycle. Thank you.
All right. Wayne Tedder, interim executive director of the CRA. You have served well.
Very well.
You've served us well. I will say that I have enjoyed working with you. And I said to I said this to you, that I've enjoyed working with you. You've done a great job. You've made it clear, and, plain and clear, so I could understand it. And I really, really appreciate that. Working with you and Sherry and Sheila and Rick and Melissa has been just a sheer joy. And I know sometimes things got rough, but I think we've landed in a soft place and we smoothed it out. And working with the CAC, y'all keep late hours. I'm hoping that our next director will help us cut down the number of hours that the CAC and you all spend together when y'all get together. So I want to just thank you for your service as our interim director. You came at a time when we needed some transition, and you helped us ease into this. And I appreciate it as chair because, I don't come to this knowing what to do, but it is good to know that we have experienced professionals like you guys to help us understand what it is that, and you don't tell us what to do, you just put it out there for us to choose, and I really, really appreciate that. So thank you for the work that you've done in leading this staff and leading us and working hard for our community. Now, you're not going far away. We're just relieving you of one of your jobs while you have more time to do the other job and more time to get by Whataburger.
She knows my end game every CAC meeting. Stop through the drive-through at Whataburger.
Yeah, we talk while he's going through the drive-through at Whataburger, see what happens. So thank you for your service, thank you for your time, and listen, I think it's important for people to know that you didn't get any additional compensation for doing these two jobs.
No?
Right.
So you did this because you love your community, and we really, really appreciate you for what you've done. So I'll let the rest of the crew say what they need to say to you as you transition out of this position, because the next meeting, as we did earlier today, the start date for the new executive director, Mr. Cox, will be September 27th. And so we'll have a new executive director, and you'll become just assistant city manager.
Thank you.
If I could as well, Wayne, you've been absolutely fantastic to work with. Look, you stepped up to the plate during a very difficult time in transition of the CRA when you literally had 4 new members. Commissioner Richardson, you were the only one that was existing. You had 4 new members of the CRA, and it was time to make some changes and head in different directions. And as the chair mentioned, this was not a compensated job for you. This was handed to you to solve above and beyond what you do for the city. And we really appreciate it. You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I think the mayor nailed it. You know, when I came on board, everything seemed to be about more and more student housing and that sort of thing, and we wanted to take a clear change in direction and really get neighborhood focused and community focused. And I think you delivered exactly what the board was asking for. So we appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Wayne, it has been an absolute pleasure working with you. And I had an opportunity to work with you more closely as interim director of the CRA than I did when you were just the assistant city manager. And I got to know you on a more personal basis, and I can tell you, I don't know of many people who have the kind of people skills that you have. Wayne, you work very well with others. You come across as very mild-mannered but methodical in what you do, and I've appreciated that. I've appreciated how you've gone out into the community and made yourself accessible to the people that we serve and developed relationships with those individuals and created a trust in the leadership of this CRA that we didn't necessarily have prior to your assuming the position. And I think that made all the difference in the world in terms of how we move forward. The relationship that you've established with our CAC, and again, the trust that they have and have established in the leadership of the CRA has been phenomenal. And so, again, I wish you all the best and certainly look forward to continuing to work with you in your single role as assistant city manager. But Wayne, thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'll just say, I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, it's been a lot of fun working with you. I'm going to miss our briefings, our CRA briefings. But I really do appreciate you stepping up without additional compensation. I think that says a lot about you, so thank you.
All right, Wayne, would you like to say something?
Well,
Don't
first
cry.
of all, thank you. This makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. I don't do this to get accolades. I do it because I care and I love what I do. I just, you know, if I don't say anything about my mom and dad and what they raised me to be and how the person I am so grateful to be able to serve Tallahassee and be able to have the opportunities I've had to make a difference here. And I hope it shows in everything I do. And every task you give me, I will get it done to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any
Madam
other?
Chair, did we vote on the budget and then the second motion? We did? Okay.
Did we? Yeah. Did you vote?
We didn't vote to bring back that item on the downtown sidewalk study. Do we need a motion
Oh,
for
I
that?
thought-
Yeah. We made one. We didn't
thought-
vote on it.
Okay,
I thought we had.
I thought we did.
We did.
It doesn't require a vote. The executive
That's what I
director
was
can
saying.
bring an item before the board at any time. It just won't be Wayne, it'll be the next
Right.
executive
Yeah,
director.
so I thought we had agreed to do that, but.
That's fine.
if- we-
I just didn't want to start something and give it to the next executive director without you having knowledge.
Okay.
So I just wanted to be respectful of what his role will be and this item, which I had been working on to try to get in front of you.
Madam Attorney, are we in order?
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Meeting adjourned.
Awesome. Great meeting.